Chapter 119, The Observer. Under the influence of some psychological shadows, Bai Yanluo couldn't help but retreat upon seeing this woman with fluffy fox ears. Her face, covered with dust and bloodstains, revealed a hint of fear. "You treacherous merchant, why are you here?" Hearing Bai Yanluo's question, the platinum-haired fox woman raised her eyebrows with a playful smile. In an instant, the fox woman leaped up and slowly landed in front of Bai Yanluo, extending her finger to playfully lift Bai's chin. "Calling me a treacherous merchant is a bit too much, isn't it? Shouldn't you call me Sister Noya or the shop owner instead? Right, little Zhu Zai." The woman named Noya spoke with a teasing tone, her actions filled with flirting intentions. Upon hearing the other party's words, especially the nickname Little Zhu Zai, Bai Yanluo's face showed a complex emotion. Immediately, she quickly retreated, creating distance between herself and Noya, and sternly said, "Don't call me that." Ahem. Noya took out a fan from her waist, elegantly covering her teasing smile with it. "But I didn't call you the wrong name. I called you by your real name, Bai Zio Zhu Tilda." Upon hearing this, Bai Yanluo, who was just full of authority and murderous aura, suddenly looked deflated. She bit her lip with a sense of unwillingness. However, Bai Yanluo did not deny Noya's words. After all, Bai Zio Zhu was her real name before becoming an apostle. Back when she had just become a hero, she thought her real name was too cute and lacked deterrence. To make her name more fitting for her status, she adopted the name Bai Yanluo, which sounded a bit more domineering, at the suggestion of Archbishop Nick. It symbolized Bai Yanluo saying goodbye to her past, weak self. And she had been using it ever since. Now, almost all church members knew that the leader of the sunlight was Apostle Bai Yanluo, but they didn't know that Bai Yanluo's real name was Bai Zio Zhu. After such a long time, being called Bai Zio Zhu by someone familiar again, a bit of Bai Yanluo's hidden true nature was provoked, and she became somewhat timid. Don't call me that." All right, the customer is always right. Whatever you say will do, Tilda." I feel like you're deceiving me." Bai Yanluo's eyes were filled with caution. She then looked around at the countless bookshelves with suspicious eyes, fearing that some trap was set up somewhere to unexpectedly trick her like before. After observing for a moment, Bai Yanluo looked strangely at Noya, who was wearing a mischievous grin. "Your shop was in the Red Lotus Leaf capital, right? Why is there an identical shop here in Oro as well?" As for this question, Noya fanned herself with a meaningful look and then turned her gaze to the world map on the wall. "Well, I just wanted to open a few more branches, Tilda." Tusk. Seeing Noya's playful demeanor, Bai Yanluo knew that asking more would be futile, so she went straight to the point. "I won't waste time talking to you. I still have to go save the Child of Destiny. I need some recovery potion and teleportation magic scrolls. Do you have any holy level scroll magic in stock?" Seeing Bai Yanluo wanting to shop, Noya's expression became even more playful. After pulling out a nearby magic scroll catalog and account book, she glanced through them briefly. Noya then tilted her head and looked carefully at Bai Yanluo's clothing. Afterward, one of her fox ears drooped down involuntarily. She sighed in a pretentious manner. "Although supplies suitable for Sword God are rare, I of course have them. However, the price is a bit high, Miss Bai Zio Zhu. I'm afraid you won't be able to afford it like this." Bai Yanluo had anticipated Noya's question. "Yes, I can't afford it right now." "Well, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you then, Tilda. However, I can help you condense magic crystals with my holy aura like before, and then I can use these magic crystals to pay off the debt." Ahem. Hearing this, Noya raised her eyebrows slightly. But quickly, Under Bai Yanluo's slightly disappointed gaze, she shook her head. I'm sorry, but I have plenty of magic crystals right now, and I don't need any more. So Tilda, then can I owe you? You know who I am anyway. You can just go to the grand church to get the money. I won't deny the debt. Well, I know about your reputation, Miss Bai. But what? We generally don't offer credit at this store, Tilda. Can't you make an exception this time? I need to hurry up and find the chosen one. It's urgent. No, Noya still replied firmly. We're familiar with each other. Is it going to kill you to make an exception? No, Tilda. Bai Yanluo felt like she was about to cry from frustration. Seeing the blue eyes of the white-haired girl already having some ripples, Noya shook her head helplessly. Fine, I'll give you a chance. Let's just barter. Do you have anything valuable on you that you can exchange for? Hey, do I look like I have anything valuable in this condition? And well, it's up to. Hearing this, Bai Yanluo couldn't help clenching her fists. A terrifying holy aura rippled around her as she looked down at her current equipment with anger. Unfortunately, what valuable things could Bai Yanluo, who had almost been completely robbed, have? Wait, there is something valuable. Isn't her own body? It's still untouched. Thinking of this, Bai Yanluo pressed on her chest with a somewhat resigned attitude. However, before she could speak, Miss Noya at her side seemed to have already guessed Bai Yanluo's thoughts and immediately spoke with a disgusted expression. I don't need a bed warmer, Tilda, forget it, Tilda. You. Upon hearing the merciless rejection, Bai Yanluo felt incredibly wronged. After all, she was quite popular in the church. Since becoming a sword god, her appearance had become increasingly perfect. Nowadays, she had countless admirers within the church. Was she really being despised? Sob. This is so unfair. So what exactly do you want? Yanbu. Noya raised her hand to her chin, assuming a contemplative pose. After a moment, under Bai Yanluo's puzzled gaze, a wave of sky-blue light slowly spread around Noya. The next instant, a contract scroll appeared in Noya's hand and was presented to Bai Yanluo. Fine, seeing how pitiful you look, I'll show you some mercy, Tilda. Sign this maid contract, and I'll give you the items, Tilda. This a soul contract, and for 3 years, that's too much. Is it? Forget it then. Saying this, Noya didn't bother talking further and directly turned around to head inside the store. Seeing Noya about to leave, Bai Yanluo became anxious and hurriedly grabbed Noya's hand. No, I'll sign, is that okay? Hearing the white-haired girl's somewhat tearful voice, Noya couldn't help but reveal a sly smile behind her back. And so, in her haste to save someone, Bai signed the body-selling contract, took a bunch of magic scrolls, and hurriedly left Noya's magic bookstore. Watching Bai Yanluo's figure quickly disappearing over the horizon, Rin Shio, who had been quietly cleaning for a long time, walked towards her mother with a slightly depressed expression on her little face. Mom Ju. What's wrong, little Rin? Noya affectionately rubbed the little girl's head. At this, the girl sighed helplessly. The girl of destiny has already been found. Why didn't you tell her? If I told her, would she still be willing to sign? Saying this, Noya playfully looked at the body-selling contract in her hand. Having the Apostle of Heaven as a maid is something many people dream of, Tilda. What do you think? If we were to auction off this body-selling contract, how much money could we make? And Mom, you're a devil. It's just a small matter, Tilda. However, after a helpless sigh, Rin Shio looked in the direction of Bai Yanluo's departure with some confusion. Mom, what is it? Although Bai Yanluo is in such a terrible state, Her oppressive aura is still quite terrifying. It seems she's still stronger than many of the seventh-tier beings, right? That's how it is. After all, there is a significant gap between the 8th and 7th tilde. But Rin Shio looked at her mother, who was daydreaming about counting money, with a puzzled expression. But if that's the case, Mom, why did you tell that harem scum that he had a 60% chance of defeating a demon king-level being? Well, that's because tilde actually tilde. Actually what? Hearing her daughter's adorable voice, Noya smiled slightly, then slowly turned her head and looked at the goddess statue on the desk not far away, her eyes filled with deep meaning. Goddess Tilda told me to say so Tilda, in the eastern part of the cold winter forest, inside the basement of a small wooden house. 3 adorable girls were silently lying next to the underground ice spring, carefully sensing and observing the pale pink, butterfly cocoon-like crystal at the bottom of the spring. These 3 cuties, needless to say, were naturally our Li Mo, Li Yu, and Xiu Yue. And the petite existence inside the crystal was the pink-haired girl who had been saved by Yumo. After receiving Yumo's origin blood, the girl's body began to undergo a massive transformation due to the immense power. To prevent energy leakage, the dark pink crystal wrapped the girl inside. However, the purpose of this crystal was not only to prevent the leakage of power. Another use was to prevent the pink-haired girl from bursting and spilling blood everywhere. After all, those who could stably accept Yumo's power and become a demon king-level existence were few and far between. There were only their 6 siblings tilde. Originally, Li Yu and the others were certain that this little girl would follow in the same footsteps, turning into a pile of minced meat. After all, a child with such tender skin who looked a bit pampered seemed unlikely to withstand the immense pain brought by the power of shadow. Even with the help of the ice spring, the probability of success was slim. However, today, upon arriving at the basement, Li Yu was surprised to find that it seemed she had misjudged her. Sister, this should be almost successful, right? Staring at the pink-haired girl sealed within the crystal, Xiu Yue blinked her blue-gold eyes, inquiring as if seeking confirmation. To this, Li Yu nodded slightly, neither confirming nor denying. Yes. Can it really be done? Yes, it's a bit unexpected indeed. There. Li Yu and Xiu Yue, just like riddle people, kept talking to each other. Unsurprisingly, the conversation between the two directly made the puzzled Li Mo, who was also watching from the side, even more confused. Originally just following the excitement, she curiously looked at her sister. Li Yu, what are you guys talking about? Nothing much, just discussing what to have for dinner. Li Yu said indifferently, seemingly without much intention to explain further, as she knew that even after explaining, her clueless sister probably still wouldn't understand. Ignoring the wolf girl who kept holding her hand and asking questions, Li Yu once again focused her attention on the dark pink crystal. Feeling the shadow power gradually stabilizing around the crystal, her emerald eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. Perhaps, after 100 years, she might have another little sister. Quite unexpected. But well, for a human to become a demon king-level existence, if they still retain humans' moral, it might be hard to control. If by then, this new sister wants to be an enemy of mother, then she might not need to show mercy. Thinking of this, an extreme coldness emerged in Li Yu's beautiful eyes, making the already chilly basement's temperature plummet even further. Although they shared the same origin, Li Yu naturally couldn't show mercy to those who intended to be enemies with their mother. Never mind. I hope you, little one, don't end up like big sister Limo. After a helpless sigh, Li Yu silently prayed in her heart. A moment later, The three sisters who had finished inspecting the ice spring returned to the living room of the cabin. Seated at the dining table, they began their lunchtime activities. Of course, the food was prepared in advance by Yumo and preserved using scrolls. In addition, there were some long-lasting dry rations delivered by the Black Rose family. As a good mother, Yumo prepared enough food for her children before leaving the cold winter forest. After all, she didn't want her children to return to primitive living when she was not around. Having them cook for themselves wasn't realistic. Xiu Yue and Li Mo had never even set foot in the kitchen. As for Li Yu, although she could cook, the taste was probably not very flattering. Yumo didn't want to come home to see 3 corpses. That's why Yumo prepared so much food. Under normal circumstances, eating the food prepared by their mother, the 3 little ones should be extremely excited and happy. However, today the usual laughter at the dining table was gone, and the entire dining room, even the whole house, was enveloped in an eerie silence. The strange atmosphere and increasingly oppressive air caused the ordinary abyss demons guarding the house outside to shiver instinctively. Without Mother around, it's just so disheartening. Sniffle. After spitting out a bone from her mouth, Limo listlessly lay on the table. Her fluffy ears drooped, and her normally energetic tail hung down weakly. Hearing Limo's words, Li Yu and Xiu Yue also fell silent. Yes, it's quite disheartening. For the first time, Li Yu agreed with her sister's statement. At this moment, an inexplicable sense of loss emerged in the hearts of the 3 little ones. Thinking about it, their mother had always been accompanying them in the cold winter forest. They could feel their mother's presence all the time. But now, Mother had gone to Linfeng City, and that familiar, gentle aura was no longer there. It made the 3 little ones feel like they had lost something important. A depressive mood began to breed continuously within their hearts. Really, if they had known earlier, they wouldn't have let Zio and the others help their mother find the shape-shifting magic. Sniffle asterisk. Although they couldn't stick close to their mother, it was a bit of a pity, but at least she would always be by their side. Sigh, it's so annoying. Li Yu listlessly lay on the dining table. The 2 little white birds that always clung to Li Yu perched on her head, pecking at their owner. Just like that, the little house was enveloped in a gloomy atmosphere. After soaking in such a mood for a long time, the wolf cub who had been lying on the table could no longer bear it. She sat up and let out an angry roar. Meow. Along with the roar, the wolf girl suddenly flipped the table, stood with her hands on her hips and looked towards the south, where the city of Wind was located. The next moment, in front of her 2 younger sisters, Limo announced her decision. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to find Mother. This statement, indeed, it expressed the feelings of the sisters. However, once again floating midair to dodge the scattered food, Xiu Yue rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked helplessly at the wolf girl. Big sister Limo, Mommy told us to watch the house. If you just run out like this, it'll upset Mommy. Do you want to be educated with the feather duster again? No, I don't want to. Hearing this, Limo shook her head quickly. The frightened wolf girl covered her buttocks, which had just recovered. They seemed to ache again. After recalling the fear of being dominated by the feather duster, Limo's fighting spirit, which had finally ignited in her heart, was extinguished by a basin of cold water. The wolf girl squatted back down pitifully. Woo, what should we do? It's so boring without Mother, woo. Limo, who had hardly ever left the winter forest or been apart from Yumo, was the most depressed at this moment. And just then, a pair of gentle little hands suddenly reached out, gently rubbing the wolf cub's head. Feeling the familiar warmth and breath, Li Mo looked up curiously at the gray-haired girl in front of her. Li Yu, I think we can actually go. After a slight smile, Li Yu showed a mischievous grin. The moment she heard these words, Li Mo's face lit up with joy. She jumped up and hugged her sister's neck. Really, really? Big sister, be gentle. Do you want to break my neck? Li Yu said helplessly. On the other side, after hearing Li Yu's words, Xiu Yue did not show any joy but looked at Li Yu with confusion. Big sister Li Yu, but mother has told us, right? Although we haven't been obedient, we've always done it secretly. Will it be a problem to openly go against mother's instructions? It's fine, I've thought of an excuse, Li Yu confidently said. But well, Tilda. But what? Xiu Yue and Li Mo said in unison. In response to the questions from the two girls, Li Yu's face gradually showed an awkward smile. We can go find mother, but for the task of watching the house, we at least have to leave one person behind. The winter forest can't be without a demon king. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the three changed slightly. To choose the unlucky one, let's play the ghost card game, Tilda. Li Yu suggested with a smile. I tried opening the novel on a different account, but the free pass wasn't working. It could be because the account is new, but if it's not working for anyone else, please let me know. In the meantime, enjoy the chapter. At the location of the Galrose fortress, Sir Asu, a big-bearded knight and a trusted aide of Marquis Xiumu, took over the defense of the Galrose fortress with more than 50,000 troops from the City of Wind after completing the handover with the Black Rose family's forces. Initially, he was somewhat apprehensive, as the fortress had not been fully repaired, with about a quarter of the walls not fully restored. If a large-scale attack by the abyssal demons occurred at this moment, his troops would have no cover and would have to engage in close combat with the demons. Fighting hand-to-hand with abyssal demons, creatures with strong infective abilities, was undoubtedly not good news. However, fortunately, since the handover, everything within 100 miles had been quiet. Not to mention the abyssal demons, they hadn't even seen the shadow of a magical beast. This made Asu gradually relax his guard. However, just as he relaxed his guard and patrolled the area with a small squad of soldiers on his warhorse, a unique white figure suddenly caught Asu's attention. What is that? At this moment, under the slightly surprised gaze of the crowd, a naive little white wolf was wagging its tail, hopping and running from afar, while a delicate and adorable gray bird stood on its head. The two cute creatures just scampered past Asu and his guards. That a snow wolf and a sunbeam bird, how could these rare spirit beasts appear here? Asu couldn't help feeling a little puzzled in his heart. However, after a brief moment of hesitation, as didn't dwell on it. After all, the winter forest was so vast that having all kinds of creatures was normal, and there was no need to worry too much. Besides, these two very friendly, spirit beasts entering the territory of the City of Wind didn't matter, as they wouldn't cause any damage. It didn't matter. He still had to continue his patrol. So the big bearded knight continued to patrol under the nearby city walls with his subordinates, directly allowing the two adorable creatures to pass through the unhealed cracks in the wall, passing through the huge sensing barrier set up at the border. Of course, it goes without saying, these two so-called spirit beasts were none other than Li Mo and Li Yu Tilda. In order not to alarm the human forces and to sneak into the territory of the City of Wind quietly, the two sisters chose to transform back into their harmless appearances and conceal their power of shadows. In this way, they adorably passed through the cracks in the wall, swaying their heads from side to side. They didn't attract anyone's attention, nor did they trigger the warning magic set up by the Snow Knight Empire at the border to detect abyssal demons. Everything went according to plan. HMPH fools Tilda. Looking at the gradually departing soldiers of the City of Wind, Li Yu, who had transformed into a sunbeam bird, cast a mocking glance at them with a hint of smugness. At the same time, Li Yu patted her elder sister's little head. "Chirp, chirp, stop showing off, big sister, let's hurry up." "Meow, meow, Tilda, I know, I know." And so, the two terrifying demon king-level abyssal demons quietly infiltrated the territory of the City of Wind. If Marquis Xiumu, the lord of this place, were to find out, he would probably be furious enough to spit out 3 liters of blood. However, to be honest, he didn't need to worry that much. After all, it wasn't the first or second time that demon king-level beings had secretly crossed the northern border and infiltrated human society. Tilda. Meanwhile, at the central part of the winter forest by Po Lake. By the lakeside, little Shoyu, dressed in a light blue elegant dress, was pouting unhappily. "Really, that's too much." Shoyu couldn't help but complain. Clearly, in the previous Capture the Ghost card game among the 3 sisters, Shoyu was the one who ended up at the bottom. Under normal circumstances, in this kind of wits and bravery game, it would usually be big sister Li Mo who ends up at the bottom. However, this game was quite different. Since big sister Li Mo didn't know what a ghost card was and only knew to throw out the cards when she saw 2 identical ones, her expression remained naive from beginning to end, making it impossible to judge. Moreover, it's not known whether it was the so-called fool's luck, but big sister Li Mo was able to draw the cards she wanted every time, easily taking first place. And she couldn't beat big sister Li Yu at all. "Woo woo woo, 2 bad big sisters. Don't you know how to let your little sister win?" Shoyu continued to grumble in her heart. However, the blue-haired girl put her hands on her hips, pouted her lips, and let out a haughty snort. "HMPH Tilda. Forget it. Considering that big sister Li Mo has never been out and big sister Li Yu rarely goes out, I won't hold it against them. I'll let you 2 have the opportunity to meet mommy this time, Tilda. After all, even though I'm asleep, my consciousness can always go to the Ansita continent, Tilda." "All right. I'll take care of the housekeeping tasks, Tilda." Shoyu confidently patted her chest. Then the blue-haired girl slowly floated up, escorted by the blue-golden power of shadows, and drifted towards the center of Bai Po Lake. Tilda, preparing to lie down at the bottom of the lake and sleep as usual. After all, she still had the ability to guard the winter forest while in a deep sleep. Tilda. However, during the drifting process, Shoyu's brows couldn't help but furrow slightly. Speaking of which, big sister Li Mo has never been to the human world, and big sister Li Yu has only been there twice. Their understanding of the human world might be somewhat. And why do I suddenly have a bad feeling? Thinking about this, Shoyu couldn't help but shiver. However, Shoyu quickly shook her head and dismissed the uneasiness in her mind. "Forget it. I won't think about it. There shouldn't be any problems. Even if there are, it's them who will be whipped by mommy's feather duster. As for me, I'll just stand aside and watch the drama." Tilda. Imagining the scene where both her sisters were being educated with the feather duster together, Shoyu couldn't help but reveal a sly smile. Meanwhile, in the central region of the Ansita continent, within the Elf Forest. As the name suggests, the Elf Forest is the dwelling place of the elves. Compared to the Winter Forest, the Elf Forest isn't large, but its interior is labyrinthine and complex, filled with a variety of enchanting floral fragrances, highly dangerous poisonous insects and beasts, as well as magical fields that block perception and cause people to become foolish. Tilda. For hundreds of years, apart from the elves, No other race has been able to adapt to the environment of the elf forest. Those slave traders or adventurers who attempted to capture elves as slaves in the elf forest almost always returned empty-handed, with many of them losing their lives inside the forest. The elf population is small, but with their unique environment and their extraordinary magical talent, the elves have always stood proudly on the Ensita continent, like a garden detached from the world, envied by. However, this situation changed dramatically over 70 years ago. At this moment, in front of the Life Tower, the sacred land of the elves, under the leadership of Elf King Ziu Karos, nearly 7,000 elven warriors and mages, fully armed, lined up to guard the area. All the elves wore solemn expressions, their bodies brimming with a strong fighting spirit. Their eyes all sparkled with intense starlight, which represented their unyielding faith in protecting their home and country. Looking at the soldiers behind him, who had trained for a long time with great determination, a strong sense of confidence emerged in Elf King Ziu Karo's eyes. Under the influence of this strong confidence, Ziu Karo's inner unease was gradually suppressed. The next moment, as the elves watched expectantly, Ziu Karos drew his golden sword from his waist. He shouted to the elves, "My fellow elves, today, it's time to strike back. This time we must completely drive those damned humans out of the forest. Let them never dare to return and bully us again." With Ziu Karo's words, the place instantly erupted with earth-shattering, impassioned roars. The fighting spirit of all the elven soldiers was raised to an all-time high. They wanted to use this battle to avenge their past humiliation. This time, they were determined to defeat those damned humans. Just as Ziu Karos was rallying the morale, an elven sentinel suddenly rushed in from a distance in a panicked manner, sprinting and shouting with all his might. "The people of the Black Rose House have broken through the barrier." The instant they heard this, Ziu Karos held his breath and waved his golden sword with a resolute determination to fight to the death. "Charge, fight them!" Accompanied by Ziu Karos' shout, the elven army began to charge forward. Oh, by the way, this scene has already happened 25 times. Ziu Karos was also quite frustrated. Originally, he just wanted to live peacefully in the elf forest, as an elf king detached from the world, enjoying a happy and beautiful daily life. After all, the elf forest has natural defenses, and no one would risk attacking the elves. At the same time, because of these natural defenses, even if a demon appeared, the elves could handle it well. Living a carefree life was not a problem. However, Ziu Karo's beautiful dream was suddenly shattered 70 years ago. That day, during an originally sunny afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm broke out. The wild power of the thunderbolts ruthlessly bombarded the elves' protective barrier. Soon, the barrier shattered due to the exhaustion of energy. The next moment, under the horrified gazes of the elves, a special human force fully armed, clad in black gold armor and bearing the emblem of roses, led by a handsome black-haired man, boldly intruded their isolated homeland. Facing the first invaders in 100 years, Ziu Karos couldn't just sit and wait for death. He immediately mobilized the power of the entire tribe, along with the ancient trees, to give the invaders a head-on blow. However, the elves, who had been living in peace for too long, had rather poor combat power. They were the ones who seemed to be hit hard, 0-0. In the end, after 20 minutes of the so-called bloody battle, Ziu Karos raised the white flag and surrendered. After that, these knights claiming to be members of the Black Rose Knights forcibly engaged in trade with them, taking a bunch of inexplicable items in exchange for a large number of treasures, ancient books, and magic scrolls within the elven tribe. Afterward, they just left. That's right. They just left. Without capturing any elves or killing any of his people, they did nothing but dismantle the barrier and force a trade. This left Ziu Karos confused, but soon, as the Elf King, he accepted this fact. If they could trick the members of the Black Rose family, who were like killing machines, with those treasures, it wasn't a bad deal. If these people just left like that. However, the facts proved that Ziu Karos was quite wrong. These people from the Black Rose family clearly saw his elven tribe as an object to shear like sheep. After that, they ran to the elves' territory 3 or 5 times. Each time they came, they took a bunch of things away. It turns out they were thinking of sustainable development. Upon realizing this, Ziu Karos was incredibly furious. He couldn't tolerate the elven tribe being treated as tools, being treated as sheep to shear. So, he began an organized counterattack. Only, the results seemed to be not very good. Over 70 years, 25 counterattacks, all ending in failure. Of course, Ziu Karos couldn't give up. After the last failure 10 years ago, he began to hide his strength and bide his time, enduring humiliation and bearing the burden, silently accumulating power, waiting for the right moment to strike back. And now, the time has evidently come. The Black Rose family sent a unit to the Northern Territory. The Black Rose Knights had also clashed with the royal family recently. They must be very weak right now. So, today is undoubtedly a rare opportunity. They must clear their previous disgrace. He had been preparing for this for so long. He had already set up so many magic arrays in advance. The elves' warriors had also gone through decades of training. Everything was so perfect. This time, they could definitely win. With that thought, Ziu Karos gritted his teeth. Emerald green magical power burst forth from within him. Charge! Better to shatter like a jade than remain intact as a tile. Let these bastards from the Black Rose family witness the blood and guts of our elven race. Roaring, Ziu Karos led the army on their 26th charge. There. I'm really sorry, I was just joking. In less than 10 bruised and swollen, his face almost unrecognizable, Ziu Karos knelt pathetically on the ground, raising the white flag for the 26th time. This scene left the elves pressed down on the ground behind him, utterly confused. Hey, what happened to shattering like jade, rather than remaining intact as a tile? Your Majesty, what on earth are you doing? The elves' questioning gazes continuously stabbed at Ziu Karos' back, making the Elf King shudder involuntarily. However, Ziu Karos quickly turned his head back and glared at his subordinates in the distance with a fierce expression. What's all the noise about? Are you not afraid of hurting our distinguished guests' ears? Really? Do you know what it means to be a wise man who knows the current situation? Stop making noise. Quiet. They had already lost. What was the point in arguing anymore? Damn it, who knew this group was so strong? Ziu Karos didn't hesitate to warn with his eyes. He signaled these guys not to resist any further because if they continued causing trouble and displeased that important person, the elves' race might really be finished. Thinking of this, Ziu Karos shakily turned his head and laughed awkwardly like a sycophant. Duke, this is all just a misunderstanding. I just wanted to welcome you. These are all just ceremonial guards, really. At this moment, a handsome black-haired man dressed in a black windbreaker uniform slowly walked up to Ziu Karos. Behind him were 2 black knights ready for action. In response to Ziu Karos' words, the black-haired man, Zio, waved his hand with great pleasure and laughed. I've found that you're quite the smooth talker, Tilda. No, it was just a joke. All right, I believe it was a joke. After all, we have such a good relationship. How could you possibly attack us? Saying this, Zio squatted down gently and kindly patted Xiu Caro's shoulder. Suddenly, an ice-cold chill spread from his shoulder throughout his body, causing Xiu Caro's to shudder. Cold sweat ran down his forehead. Right. We've been good friends for decades. How could we possibly attack you? The magic earlier was just fireworks, ha ha ha. Xiu Caro's laughter was full of embarrassment and trepidation, fearing that this resistance would provoke the other party's anger and cause his own demise. Yes, those fireworks were quite nice, Tilda. Zio didn't get angry, just said playfully. After all, for him, using these elves' rebellion to train his troops had always been a good choice, Tilda. That's why he had spared Xiu Caro's time and time again. Moreover, there was another benefit. Every time these elves failed in their resistance, they became very easy to communicate with Tilda. Thinking of this, Zio revealed a bright smile that could captivate thousands of girls and continued to pat Xiu Caro's shoulder. Since we're old friends then, can I borrow something from you? That shouldn't be a problem, right? No problem at all. Whatever you need, no problem. Just as Zio had anticipated, Xiu Caro's, after hearing this, didn't think much about it and immediately nodded repeatedly. He looked as ridiculous as could be. Although he was an 8th rank expert now, he had ended up in such a sorry state. In some ways, it was truly unbelievable. Seeing Xiu Caro's cooperation, Zio nodded in satisfaction. He didn't say more and chose to cut to the chase. Well, I'll be direct then. I'd like to borrow the holy sword from your elf race. Upon hearing this, Xiu Caro's continued nodding. No problem. You can borrow her for as long as you need, but... He paused, as if remembering something, and looked at the black-haired man with a slightly furrowed brow. There's a small issue with the sword. Oh, what's the problem? Zio asked. Well, the holy sword, after transforming, is a bit rebellious and not very obedient. I'm afraid she might upset you. Oh, upon hearing this, Zio playfully shook his head. Don't worry, I have 1,000 ways to make her obedient. Just bring her over. But if we do it here? Xiu Caro's hesitated. However, Zio had no interest in wasting more time with him. After taking control of the entire Satic Empire, he had become busier than ever. Thus, looking at the indecisive Xiu Caro's, Zio narrowed his black eyes and firmly said, Bring her over. This all right, Xiu Caro's said, trembling. Seeing Zio's insistence, he didn't have much choice but to slowly raise his hand and channel the magic within his body. In the next moment, under the slightly expectant gazes of the onlookers, a summoning array appeared with a burst of green light and the release of a wild magical aura. A small golden figure emerged in the center of the array. However, after seeing the small figure clearly, Zio and the Black Knights behind him couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression. Pointing at the little one in the center of the array, Zio disdainfully glanced at Elf King Xiu Caro's and asked, What the hell is this cursed lowly? And why does she have an ecstatic expression on her face? Is your holy sword some kind of hentai pervert? Beautiful golden twin tails, a cute pinkish face, paired with those dazzling amber eyes, shining like jewels. Although this little girl's appearance couldn't compare to Yumo, she was still considered outstanding among those Zio had met. And at this moment, this adorable girl was wearing a shoulder-exposing dress made of elven leaves and soft silk. The simple lace-wide straps accentuated her lovely collarbones, revealing a small patch of delicate skin on her chest. Her slender legs, wrapped in enchanting black stockings, peeked out from beneath her white dress as she moved Tilda. She wore a simple floral wreath in her pale golden hair, which was then gathered behind her, fully exposing her slender neck. Without a doubt, the girl was incredibly endearing. However, Such a lovely being was now tightly bound by vines and lying on the ground. Her mouth was even stuffed with an unidentified round object. This gave Zio a very odd feeling. More importantly, if an ordinary girl were bound in such an uncomfortable position, she would surely show a painful expression and struggle fiercely. Yet, this blonde lowly in front of him didn't seem to be in pain at all, and even had a flushed face, as if she was secretly enjoying it. Upon realizing this, a rare shadow crossed Zio's usually composed face. He looked helplessly at the Elf King, Zeukaros, beside him. At this moment, Zio understood why the Elf King had been so hesitant earlier. "I didn't expect your family's holy sword to be a bit kinky." Hearing this, Zeukaros lowered his head in shame. However, before the Elf King could say anything, the sacred sword lowly, bound and twitching on the ground, suddenly shuddered as if she realized she was now in full view of everyone. In an instant, her enraptured expression vanished, replaced by a determined and furious look, and she began to struggle violently. A powerful surge of energy suddenly erupted from her. The terrifying pressure caused the surrounding, less powerful elves to tremble. The ground cracked abruptly. Seeing this, Zio couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in interest. Not bad, her strength is impressive. A simple sword spirit possessing the power of a 7th peak rank. Truly worthy of being a holy sword. She should be able to meet Lady Yumo's requirements. However, it seemed a bit difficult to get along with her. Thinking this, Zio slowly walked toward the holy sword lowly and squatted down in front of her. As she saw a strange man appear before her, the blonde lowly immediately displayed a fierce glare. She fixed her ferocious gaze on Zio's face, as if she was ready to lunge at him and bite him. Upon seeing this, Zeukaros at the side hurriedly spoke up. "Your Grace, be careful, she's very fierce. She bites." "Oh, fierce." Zio smiled playfully, then nodded his head slightly, somewhat noncommittal. "She is a bit adorably fierce, Tilda." After chuckling, Zio slowly raised his hand, seemingly intending to undo the bindings around her. This action once again stirred Zeukaros' anxiety. "Your Grace, don't undo the bindings. She is very hostile towards strangers. She needs some education first. If you undo the bindings, it will be very troublesome." "Troublesome? Will she attack me?" "Why, yes. As long as it's a stranger, she will attack." "Oh, interesting." Hearing this, Zio raised his eyebrows slightly, revealing a smile that hinted at deeper intentions. "It's fine, she's a child after all. It's normal to be a little naughty. A little discipline will do." With that, Zio slowly raised his hand. Endless black magical power gathered in his palm, instantly transforming into a gigantic energy hammer. The next moment, under the slightly terrified gazes of the elves, Zio showed no mercy and struck the blonde lowly's head with a thunderous clang tilde, accompanied by a terrifying burst of energy. The formerly snarling blonde lowly saw stars and collapsed to the ground, seemingly unable to wake up for the time being. Afterwards, a burly black knight at the side approached at Zio's signal and picked up the blonde lowly from the ground. "Thank you for your cooperation, my dear friend." Patted the Elf King on the shoulder once more, Zio smiled contentedly. "Since there's nothing else to do, I'll take my leave. Tilda, goodbye, my dear friend." After waving politely, Zio, along with his entourage from the Black Rose family, slowly withdrew from the elven territory. Watching the receding figure that seemed like a nightmare, the tense Elf King finally heaved a sigh of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. With the relaxation of his spirit, he finally collapsed from exhaustion, tears streaming down from his pig-like eyes. "Please don't come back, I beg you, really. Wu. Inside the Wind City guest house. Bai Yanluo, who had rushed into the guest house, didn't care about her previous encounter with the despicable merchant when she saw Mengxi. With a huge sense of relief, she collapsed onto the floor in front of several members of the Asumo's church, her legs giving way. "It's so good that you're okay. I'm so glad." Bai Yanluo spoke sincerely. Seeing this, Mengxi couldn't help but feel a little guilty and stuck her tongue out. "Sorry, Sister Bai, I've made you worry." It's fine, as long as you're okay." The Black Rose family, on the other hand, actually did something good this time. The Black Rose family, huh? Mengxi's tone took on a hint of strangeness. Detecting the oddness in the girl's words, Bai Yanluo asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing." Mengxi smiled and waved her hand. "Rather, Sister Bai, what happened to you?" "Sai, it's a long story." The two of them began chatting like this. In fact, Mengxi was part of the Sunlight Squad and, strictly speaking, was a subordinate of Bai Yanluo. However, due to her status as the chosen girl of destiny, there was no clear hierarchy between her and Bai Yanluo. They had a fairly deep friendship after all. Bai Yanluo was the one who discovered Mengxi in the small town, saved her, and brought her back to the church. But just as Bai Yanluo was complaining about her experience of being tricked by a cunning fox to Mengxi, Cabin, the red-haired Earth Apostle leaning on the doorway, couldn't help but frown. "Lord Bai Yanluo, have you forgotten? His Holiness the Pope is urgently summoning you back." The moment she heard these words, at the mention of the word Pope, Bai Yanluo's words came to an abrupt halt, and her body involuntarily shuddered slightly. A fleeting trace of fear flashed in her azure eyes. After a moment of silence, Bai Yanluo solemnly took Mengxi's hand. "Mengxi, how about you come back with me? Don't worry about me, Sister Bai, you go ahead. But this is the Snow Knight Empire, and those people just attacked us with magic energy fission bombs. I'm worried that they have some other malicious intentions." Bai Yanluo spoke with a serious gaze. However, as soon as she spoke, Cabin couldn't help but sit up. "Lord Bai Yanluo, the previous bombing wasn't the intention of the Snow Knight Empire. It was the Fu ****3rd Prince who did it. Now that he's dead, the Snow Knight Empire is negotiating with our Archbishop. The Emperor even issued a soul oath, so there's no chance of any trouble. Besides, Miss Mengxi hasn't fully recovered yet. She just took our church's holy medicine and needs to rest for a couple of days before she can leave with you. Moreover, with me and the third hero here to protect Miss Mengxi, what is there to worry about?" Impatience filled Cabin's words. He had long been jealous and discontent with Bai Yanluo, who joined the church later but had now become the Apostle of Heaven. Naturally, his tone wasn't very pleasant. Moreover, if Bai Yanluo doesn't return soon, he would be scolded by the Pope as well, right? A trace of dissatisfaction appeared in Cabin's eyes. Looking at this strong red-haired man, Bai Yanluo's azure eyes narrowed slightly, filled with distrust. At that moment, while Bai Yanluo was silent, Mengxi's gentle and sweet voice slowly reached her ears. "It's fine, Sister White. I actually have something to take care of here. Sai, okay, but once you're healed, leave as soon as possible. I have a feeling that the Wind City isn't very safe." "I understand, Sister Bai. You should hurry back. It's best to prioritize the Pope's Crimson Summon." "Sai, I know. Take good care of yourself." With a helpless sigh and bidding farewell to Mengxi, Bai Yanluo leaped up, transforming into a white meteor that shot out the window. In an instant, she disappeared into the sky. As Mengxi watched Bai Yanluo leave, she couldn't help but furrow her brows slightly, a trace of confusion appearing in her pale purple eyes. "Speaking of which, where did you? Oh no, where did Ziomo go?" Why hasn't she come back yet? Before Bai Yanluo arrived at Wind City. Not wanting to disturb Mengxi's conversation with the other members of the Church of Asumos, and feeling slightly annoyed by Cabin's disdainful gaze, Yumo walked out of the reception hall on her own. She entered the city center of Wind City, planning to explore this human metropolis thoroughly. After all, this was Miss Yumo's first encounter with a human city in more than 500 years, and it was the capital of the Northern Territory, Wind City Leafing. The capital, right? It should be the most developed, shouldn't it? Yumo couldn't help but think this, and her expectations soared even higher. Unlike the disappointing church knights and Galro's fortress guards she had encountered before, the city's development level was refreshing and satisfying for Yumo. At the very least, it was much better than she had imagined. The overall level of civilization on the Anceta continent. Probably about the same as the medieval period of the Blue Star era, right? However, compared to the people of that time, the people on the Anceta continent could use magic, fighting spirit, or sacred power and various other energies, as well as all kinds of strange magic. With the help of these types of magic, the overall productivity of human civilization was quite impressive. Food was abundant year after year, and even in the cold climate of the Northern Territory, people didn't have to worry about food and clothing. It was for this reason that the people of this continent had so much time to cultivate. The food is quite rich. Upon arriving at the commercial street, Yumo, who was looking around, quickly sighed at this realization. The various unknown ingredients displayed on the stalls and the wide variety of finished dishes made Yumo marvel at the magic's wonder. It seemed that with just one high-level life magic, a field could be harvested in a few weeks after planting seeds. The highly developed animal husbandry industry also ensured they wouldn't lack meat. Now Yumo finally understood why there hadn't been any famines on the Anceta continent for more than 500 years, even though it was an ancient civilization. As for clothing, although their clothes were nowhere near as beautiful and luxurious as those brought by Seba, they were warm enough. It was no wonder these empires and lords could maintain their rule for so long. After all, the basic needs of the people were guaranteed, and there were no problems of hunger or lack of clothing. Life was good, and generally people wouldn't rebel. After examining the food stalls, the housing situation for the common people was also much better than Yumo had imagined. There were no broken thatched huts. People mostly lived in 2- or 3-story stone brick houses. What surprised Yumo even more was that there seemed to be quite a few children with school bags going to school. Except for those slaves who had their identity stripped. Most people's lives seemed pretty good. At least that was the case in Wind City. Why not? Should I try some local food? Yumo thought curiously. As for her, she was quite fond of delicious food. Otherwise, she wouldn't have deliberately studied so many dishes back on the Blue Star. Anyway, she had plenty of star coins provided by the Black Rose family, so she was a bit of a wealthy young lady Tilda. With that in mind, Yumo happily came to a barbecue stand and, in her cute, childish voice, even imitating the cute gaze of her own children who were always being adorable, she said, "Auntie, give me 3 skewers of meat, please, Tilda." As she spoke, the little girl handed over a shiny star coin from her hand. "All right, Tilda." Upon hearing this, the barbecue stand owner enthusiastically replied and quickly handed over 3 steaming, fragrant skewers of grilled meat to Yumo. However, the moment she saw the girl's beautiful face, the barbecue stand owner's eyes suddenly widened and her body trembled. She froze in place, her eyes filled with disbelief. Huh. After witnessing this scene, Yumo couldn't help but frown. To be honest, considering that it was too conspicuous to go out in the identity of the young lady of the Black Rose family. Yumo had chosen this pink-haired little girl's identity to experience the life of ordinary people. Of course, after learning from her previous encounter with Cabin, she had covered the slave mark on her leg and put on plain clothes. However, Yumo, who thought she could walk around quietly, suddenly discovered after arriving on the street. Now she seemed to be even more noticeable. Although people's gazes at her weren't as amazed as when she first entered the city, everyone who noticed her couldn't help but glance at her twice. Their eyes were filled with astonishment and confusion, making Yumo quite uncomfortable. If she hadn't been able to sense any ill intent from their gazes, Yumo would have suspected that the people in Wind City were all infatuated with young girls. What was going on? Could it be that pink hair is very rare? That can't be right. Q has pink hair, doesn't she? The strange reactions of the people around her made Yumo feel puzzled, with countless question marks appearing in her head. Meanwhile, at the medical center in the city center, not far away, under the protection of many soldiers, a middle-aged woman wearing a refined emerald green noble dress with white hair at her temples finally finished her hours-long visit with the soldiers. In Wind City, there was probably no one who didn't recognize this woman. This woman was once the captain of the Blizzard Knights, and now the Marchioness, Aurora. At present, to prevent further attacks from the Abyssal demons, Marquis Xiumu had dispatched two-thirds of the troops in Wind City to nearby fortresses for defense. At the same time, he personally led the majority of the Blizzard Knights to inspect the border and strengthen the defense of their positions. When he was away from Wind City, many important matters in the city were entrusted to his wife, Aurora. As for this arrangement, both the people of the Marquis family and the citizens of Wind City had no objections, as they were all well aware of Aurora's capabilities. Today, according to the schedule, Aurora visited the Central Hospital to console the survivors who had fought against the Abyssal demons, as well as the soldiers who had not fully recovered after being knocked unconscious by the blood butterfly. Visiting soldiers and civilians at the grassroots level was a tradition of the Marquis family. It was precisely because of this that the Marquis family had a strong bond with the people in their territory, which had thwarted the royal family's attempts to instigate unrest within the Snow Knight Empire on multiple occasions. Thank you for coming, my lady. Thank you for your cooperation, Marchioness. It's my duty. There. After exchanging pleasantries with the hospital director, Aurora concluded her morning schedule. Subsequently, escorted by a group of guards and a personal maid, she left the hospital and headed toward the carriage parked nearby. My lady, shall we return to the mansion directly? The maid, wearing glasses, respectfully asked Aurora from behind. Upon hearing this, Aurora slightly nodded her head. Yes, let's go back first. Very well, I will inform the mansion to prepare lunch immediately. Afterward, the maid carefully retreated and began conversing with another knight. Aurora, on the other hand, slowly walked toward the carriage, her face now devoid of the gentle smile she had worn all morning. At this moment, her slightly aged face bore nothing but solemnity and gloom. Seeing the Marchioness like this, the surrounding soldiers couldn't help but feel a wave of sadness. But they were indeed powerless. After all, the young lady had been missing for over a month. As a grandmother, how could the Marchioness not be worried? The situation would probably not improve until the young lady was found. Thinking of this, everyone sighed. However, at this very moment, a Blizzard Knight's rider hurriedly rode his warhorse to the carriage. Subsequently, under the astonished gazes of everyone, he immediately dismounted and excitedly rushed to Aurora's side. My lady. Seeing the knight so agitated, Aurora, who was about to close the carriage door, couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression. "What's the matter? Why are you so excited?" That, someone reported. At the Central Commercial District, someone saw the young lady. The moment she heard these words, Aurora's eyes shrank sharply, and the noblewoman's fan in her hand dropped to the ground beneath the horse. After a brief moment of shock, Aurora hurriedly grabbed the knight's shoulder. "What did you say? Quick, take me there." After wandering around the streets for tens of minutes, Yumo's frown grew tighter because after eating the grilled meat, she visited several more shops and ordered many local specialty dishes. However, almost every time, the shop owners would freeze for a moment when they saw her. At first, they seemed to want to say something, but soon, due to her attitude, they began to doubt themselves. Eventually, after struggling, they chose not to say anything. This puzzled Yumo. That gaze. Did they recognize me? Or perhaps recognize the disguise I'm currently wearing? But if they did recognize me, why wouldn't they speak up? Besides, why would so many people recognize a slave girl? Moreover, she had made some adjustments. Strange. Feeling perplexed, Yumo silently walked to a nearby cotton candy vendor. This time, Yumo didn't use her cute, endearing tone of voice. Instead, she stood expressionless in front of the stall. This time, when the vendor noticed Yumo, he showed an expression of terror. Retreating in panic. "Young lady Yuener." The vendor's tone was filled with fear and caution, as if Yumo had once done something extremely outrageous to him. Upon hearing this address, Yumo's deep blue eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. He said, "Yuener. Who is Yuener?" Yumo slowly walked over and curiously asked. Hearing this question, the vendor was visibly stunned. After examining the pink-haired girl for a moment, his black eyes revealed a hint of astonishment. You're not young lady Yuener." "No," Yumo decisively replied. "So who is this Yuener you're talking about?" "Lady Yuener she is." However, just as Yumo was about to obtain the information from the vendor, his words suddenly came to a halt. He became somewhat fearful and looked uneasily behind Yumo. At the same time, a deep and provocative voice filled with a strong sense of provocation and lust slowly sounded in Yumo's ear, causing her to involuntarily bite her lip. "Oh, my Tilda, what a lovely little girl we have here. You're so adorable." Upon hearing this familiar roguelike phrase, Yumo's face immediately darkened. "Really?" Just when I was about to know the answer, someone came to cause trouble. What kind of plot twist is this? Feeling helpless and inwardly sighing, Yumo slowly turned her head to look at the man beside her. He was about 165 centimeters tall, with a burly physique, wearing brown leather armor, wielding a giant hammer, and sporting a big beard. It was obvious that the one who had just flirted with her was this bearded man. At the same time, upon seeing the bearded man appear, the people around them couldn't help but retreat, casting fearful eyes toward the bearded man. The nearby shopkeepers and residents were well aware that this bearded man was an A-rank adventurer who had arrived in Wind City not long ago, and his strength was formidable. However, his conduct was truly unsatisfactory. With the departure of most of the Blizzard Knights from Wind City and the city being short-handed, law enforcement was somewhat insufficient. The bearded man became even more lawless. Just a few days ago, he had beaten up an old man selling meat at the end of the street over a minor dispute, leaving him half dead. And now, seeing the wine bottle in the bearded man's right hand and the strong smell of alcohol around him, it was not difficult to guess that this guy was drunk again. When drunk, this man became even more lawless. It was rumored that he particularly liked little girls. He had previously killed an 8-year-old child in the Sadik Empire and was wanted for it, which led him to flee to the Snow Knight Empire. And now, wasn't the little girl he had set his eyes on in trouble? Looking at the petite, frail girl who was not even 1.3 meters tall, the nearby crowd couldn't help but cast sympathetic glances. If such a girl were to be violated by this beast, she wouldn't survive, would she? Her small body might be pierced straight through. Imagining the girl's possible fate, the nearby people shivered in unison. Although someone had already gone to notify the guards, it might be too late. Moreover, even if they did arrive, the guards' strength might not be enough to stop this drunken A-rank mercenary. However, at this moment, two men with a strong sense of justice in the crowd suddenly stepped up to the bearded man, angrily berating him as if trying to stop the impending atrocity. "This is Linfeng City, the city of wind. You don't dare to." Boom tilde. However, before they could finish speaking, the irritable bearded man swung his arm violently. In an instant, both men were sent flying. They slammed into a distant wall, creating two large holes. For a moment, everyone held their breath and dared not say another word. After all, the bearded man had already brandished his mace. Obviously, whoever spoke up would be mercilessly sent flying by the mace. The strongest among the crowd was only at the 4th level, and they didn't dare to confront this 5th-level mercenary head-on. Seeing the sudden silence in the crowd, the bearded man laughed. Then he turned his head, looking at the cute little girl he believed was already in his grasp. Just thinking about hearing her sweet moans made him even more excited. "Hee, little girl, come. Uncle will take you to have some." With that, the bearded man slowly reached out his right hand towards the girl, revealing a nauseating smile that he thought was handsome, but was actually extremely sleazy. Upon seeing this, a hint of red light spilled from Yumo's deep blue eyes, and a dangerous aura gradually emerged around her. This person, he was truly disgusting. Yumo's eyes were full of disgust. If this had happened in the great winter forest, Yumo would have probably called the abyssal demon to come and devour this man. Well, that's not quite right. Eating such a piece of rotten meat would likely give them an upset stomach, so it would be better to directly blast him into ashes with an annihilation beam. Unfortunately, she was not in the forest right now, so she couldn't act so unrestrained. She had to figure out a way to quietly resolve the situation. Might as well. With this thought, Yumo's eyes narrowed slightly, and a butterfly with blood-red patterns slowly flew over from a nearby tree. Simply knocking this guy out would do. They could just think he had passed out from drinking too much. Yumo planned this in her heart. When the crowd dispersed or during the quiet of the night, she could send a blood butterfly to kill this man. Such a person was a waste of resources alive, and his strength wasn't something anyway. Thinking of this, a cruel smile spread across Yumo's small face. However, at this moment, the bearded man had no idea of the impending danger and was intently watching Yumo. Seeing that Yumo hadn't responded, the drunk bearded man lost his patience and reached out his greasy hand towards her. In an instant, the onlookers held their breath. The smile on Yumo's face became even more radiant. And just then, Yumo's deep blue eyes narrowed slightly. Someone's coming. The next moment, under the astonished gazes of the onlookers, a brown-haired woman dressed as a noble lady suddenly appeared in their line of sight, wrapped in a burst of orange aura and moving at lightning speed. "You fat pig, put your filthy hand away from my granddaughter." Along with the woman's furious roar, the iron fist, wrapped in powerful aura, suddenly struck the bearded mercenary's face. Boom! In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. With a loud bang, the iron fist sank deeply into the bearded man's face. Blood mixed with teeth sprayed out of his mouth and nose. In a flash, under the force of the tremendous blow, the bearded man was abruptly sent flying. He slammed into a bronze statue in the distance. Accompanied by a clang sound, the bearded man couldn't get back up. Wow, Tilda. Seeing this, Yumo showed a slightly surprised expression. Clearly, the actions of this unknown noblewoman had taken Yumo quite by surprise. However, what was even more surprising came later. In the next instant, just as Yumo was about to express her gratitude to the noblewoman, she was suddenly caught off guard and tightly embraced by the noblewoman who had turned around. "Yuener, you're finally back." "Huh? What's going on?" For a moment, Yumo stood dumbfounded in place. What? What's going on here?" Seeing the middle-aged woman who had embraced her without a word and claimed to be her grandmother, Yumo couldn't help but feel puzzled, with question marks all over her head. However, Yumo's confusion went unnoticed by the noblewoman, who was none other than Aurora. Overcome with emotion, she tightly held onto Yumo, feeling the warmth of her granddaughter. With excitement, tears unconsciously slid down her cheeks. "It's great that you're fine, my Yuener." Witnessing this scene, the arriving members of the Blizzard Knights revealed a touched smile, silently standing at the corner of the street, watching the heartwarming moment unfold. The onlookers, who had been watching for a long time, couldn't help but burst into cheers after seeing the bearded man being punched away by the lady. After seeing the lady embracing the pink-haired girl, many people's eyes showed the words as expected, although their attitudes had changed a lot. "So it's the young lady after." People couldn't help but whisper in admiration. What? The reactions of these people. Glancing at her surroundings, after noticing Aurora's excited emotions and the expressions of the people around, Yumo's deep blue eyes couldn't help but narrow. At this moment, she finally understood why the people had been looking at her so strangely earlier. So that slave girl used to be a noble's daughter. What a coincidence. Despite being a noble from Wind City, how did she end up as a slave? If Yumo hadn't intervened, the girl would have died in the forest. Never mind. She should deal with the current situation first. Casting a glance at the tearful lady, considering her sober yet emotional state, and the fact that she had saved Yumo, Yumo abandoned the idea of making her fall asleep. After all, a woman in the early stage of Saint Tyr passing out on the street for no reason would indeed raise suspicions. So, Yumo deliberately put on an innocent expression, speaking with a cute tone. Thank you for saving me. Also, may I ask, who are you?" "Yuan Yuener." Upon hearing the girl's puzzled words, Aurora couldn't help but shiver, releasing the girl with an incredulous look in her violet eyes, full of worry. "Yuener, don't you remember me?" Faced with such a question, Yumo continued to show an innocent expression and tilted her head, answering with confusion. "Yuener, who is that? I'm sorry, ma'am, but I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "Mistaken?" "Yes, that's right." Hearing these words and feeling the completely different tone from Yuener, Aurora gradually calmed her excitement. Wiping away her tears, she closely examined the delicate pink-haired girl in front of her. After a moment, Aurora's eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly, her lips pressed together in a complex mix of emotions. "Indeed, you're not Yuener." Hearing this, though Yumo appeared timid on the surface, she secretly let out a small smile inside. Hee, as expected. When she had used the power of shadow to alter her appearance, although she had based it on the pink-haired girl or Yuener, Yumo hadn't copied everything. She had just simulated a general appearance, height, and voice, with some differences in facial features. It was enough to deceive the slave traders back then. But for the girl's family and friends, who spent day and night with her, this difference should be noticeable. She was just a stranger who happened to resemble their granddaughter. The facts proved Yumo's judgment was quite accurate. The woman claiming to be her grandmother revealed a bewildered expression after carefully observing her for a while, having realized her mistake. With this in mind, Yumo couldn't help but sigh internally. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Yumo feigned an apology, and then timidly met the noblewoman's violet eyes. According to Yumo's judgment, after realizing she wasn't her granddaughter, the lady would apologize and release her shoulder. After that, she could happily return to the welcoming hotel to find Minxie. Having been away for so long, if she didn't go back, the girl might start to worry. However, as Yumo met Aurora's gaze, her brow furrowed and her heart shuddered. What now? What's happening? At this moment, Yumo was surprised to discover that the noblewoman in front of her showed no intention of letting her go. On the contrary, she held onto her shoulders even more firmly, her violet eyes filled with indescribable excitement and joy. The next instant, Yumo found herself once again enveloped in Aurora's embrace. "Zaire, I finally found you." The woman's voice was filled with emotion, and her entire body trembled with excitement. "Naya." At this moment, Yumo's mind completely froze. What on earth was going on? Who the heck was Zaire? In the central area of Wind City, within the Marquis's residence, a man with light pink hair, wearing a head wrap that resembled a rice dumpling, was leaning on a crutch, laboriously walking around the estate. It seemed like he was undergoing some sort of rehabilitation training. If Yumo were here, she would easily recognize that this man was the nobleman who had tried to kiss the back of her hand when they entered the city. Benjamin. However, for some unknown reason, Benjamin couldn't get what he wanted, and even ended up hitting his head on the icy lake, leaving him with a broken and bleeding skull and a grade 3 concussion. As a result, he was now unable to coordinate his thoughts and body well. His whole body was in a shaky state. Damn it, what on earth happened back then? Benjamin couldn't help but resentfully grumble, although he wasn't sure why the horse was startled. From the reaction of the Black Rose family members at that time, it was very likely that their own mount's loss of control had something to do with them. However, despite the resentment in his heart, Benjamin didn't have the courage to confront the Black Rose family. Even the entire Marquis family couldn't compare to the Black Roses, let alone him, a second heir. What had to be endured still had to be endured. Nevertheless, thinking back to the beautiful eyes of the young lady from the Black Rose family, a touch of infatuation surfaced in Benjamin's heart. If he could win her heart, he would surely gain the support of the Black Rose family. With their help, the difficulty of obtaining the title of Marquis in the future would certainly be significantly reduced. After fantasizing about his future wonderful life, Benjamin couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. Just then, the sound of a carriage drew Benjamin's attention, prompting the light pink-haired man to curiously gaze at the estate's entrance. The next moment, under the watchful eyes of Benjamin and the maids, a high-end yet not ostentatious carriage, escorted by a group of knights, entered the estate. Lo, it seemed that the lady had returned. Realizing this, Benjamin hastily had a maid tidy his clothes, preparing to greet Aurora. After all, as a distant relative, he needed to obtain the approval of the Marchioness to secure the Marquis title. However, just as Benjamin was ready to greet Aurora, the next scene left him utterly shocked, as if struck by lightning, unable to recover for a long time. His eyes widened as round as eggs, and his mouth agape wide enough to swallow a soccer ball. At that moment, the carriage door opened, and Aurora slowly stepped down. If it was just the lady, Benjamin wouldn't have lost his composure. But the issue was, the person held in the lady's arms. Under the astonished and excited gazes of all the servants, a delicate little girl, resembling a porcelain doll, was held by Aurora as she stepped out of the carriage. Staring intently at that familiar face and the girl who should have been dead long ago, Benjamin clenched his fists in rage. No, no, it can't be. Ewenor, how is she still alive? That useless trash, 5 years ago in the garden of the Marquis mansion. Grandma Tilda. Looking at the two lovely little ones wearing flower wreaths in front of her, Aurora felt as if her heart was melting. The Marchioness couldn't help but soften her stern gaze and reveal a gentle, loving expression. She slowly squatted down and tenderly rubbed the little heads of the two girls. "Sire Ewenor, you mustn't skip class next time, all right, Tilda?" "We know, Grandma." I understand." The two delicate little girls responded in completely different tones. However, their voices were undoubtedly cute, which made Aurora's heart bloom with happiness. She couldn't help but embrace her two adorable granddaughters. Not far away, Aurora's husband, Marquis Zumu, along with their son and daughter-in-law, silently sat on the grass, watching this harmonious and happy scene. This was Aurora's happiest time. However, beautiful moments always seem to be so short-lived. 4 years ago, looking at the two horribly mutilated corpses in front of her, Aurora was completely stunned on the spot. Tears continuously flowed down her cheeks, and an unparalleled sadness appeared in her violet eyes. At this moment, Aurora couldn't accept how the two, who were lively and healthy just yesterday, could be like this today. What on earth happened? Covering her mouth, Aurora sobbed her question. In response to her inquiry, the blood-stained man beside her, filled with murderous intent, slowly lowered his head. "I'm sorry I arrived too late. They encountered a bishop from the Divine Punishment sect, that sadistic guy." How could this happen? Unable to accept the reality, Aurora finally fainted helplessly in Zumu's arms. On this day, the Marquis family's young master and his wife perished at the hands of the Divine Punishment sect. Aurora lost her beloved son and daughter-in-law. However, misfortune did not leave her family just yet. 3 years ago. What did you say? Zaire is missing. She hasn't been found yet. Aurora, who had just returned from the campaign against the Abyssal demon, fell to her knees upon hearing the butler's report. "Milady." Seeing this, the butler Audite hurriedly stepped forward to support Aurora, speaking with a tone full of guilt. "I'm terribly sorry, milady. We failed to keep a close eye on the young lady. She went to attend the festival alone, and as a result..." Useless. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Aurora lost her usual elegance and shoved Audite away. After the death of her son and daughter-in-law, Aurora had treated the two granddaughters as her entire world. Unable to accept her granddaughter's disappearance, Aurora led more than half of the Blizzard Knights and a third of the local troops to search for Zaire. However, Zaire seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. On this day, Aurora lost another granddaughter. Having lost her son, daughter-in-law, and Zaire, Aurora poured all her remaining love onto Ewenor. She cared for her immensely. Aurora, the once strict teacher, was no more, replaced by an indulgent grandmother who spoiled her granddaughter. Although her love had turned Ewenor into a troublemaker, prideful princess, Aurora didn't regret it. Her only hope now was for Ewenor to live a happy, carefree life. However, in recent years, the heavens seemed to be particularly harsh on the Marquis family. For some unknown reason, the Crown Prince of the Snow Knight Empire chose Ewenor as a candidate for his consort. When Ewenor learned of this news, the usually willful child angrily chose to run away from home. Aurora thought Yuenor would return after a couple of days, just like before. Unexpectedly, the child didn't return for nearly 3 days, and no messages were sent back to the family. Yuenor's guards also failed to report back. By the time Aurora realized the severity of the situation and rushed to Yuenor's secret hideout, it was already too late. Yuenor had disappeared. The hideout was in disarray, and her 4 dedicated guards lay dead inside. Instantly, Aurora realized that her granddaughter had been kidnapped. An unparalleled sense of regret filled Aurora's heart. If it hadn't been for her negligence, Yuenor wouldn't have been abducted within the Marquis family's territory. As before, the Marquis family immediately began a large-scale search. Unlike the past, they indeed found clues about Yuenor, but they could never catch the kidnappers. Several capture plans ended in failure, as if the criminals could anticipate their every move. Until the Galrose fortress was attacked by abyssal demons, Aurora couldn't obtain any other information related to Yuenor. In a fit of rage, she severely punished Yuenor's captain of the guard and dismissed the search officer. But these were useless gestures, unable to change the fact that Yuenor had been kidnapped. Having lost her son and daughter-in-law, and losing Zaire as well, now even her last granddaughter, Yuenor, was of unknown life or death. Undoubtedly, Aurora's heart was filled with despair, spending her days tearfully at the Marquis's mansion. Except for dealing with some necessary matters, Aurora had hardly left the mansion. Today, she went out only to handle the internal affairs of the City of Wind on behalf of her husband. However, what Aurora didn't expect was that, on this trip, she would encounter her long-lost granddaughter. A few minutes ago, inside the carriage, Aurora's heart was undoubtedly more excited as she looked at the restrained, shrinking pink-haired girl sitting opposite her. Yes, it's Zaire. After observing her for a moment, Aurora was almost certain of her inner guess. The slightly different appearance from Yuenor, the strikingly similar aura, and the unique pink hair and blue eyes of the Marquis family was the most convincing evidence. Aurora didn't believe that there would be 2 such similar people in the world other than twins, especially with such similar ages. Moreover, although Zaire was Yuenor's twin sister, she was different from the outgoing and lively Yuenor. Zaire was gentle, introverted, and timid, just like the little girl in front of her. With a similar appearance and consistent personality, Aurora didn't want to believe that she wasn't Zaire. Although she still hadn't found Yuenor, which made Aurora extremely worried, Zaire's return brought long-lost joy to the lady. The only thing that puzzled Aurora was why the girl didn't recognize her. Could it be amnesia? Yes, it must be so. If it wasn't for amnesia, Zaire should have come to the Marquis's mansion to find them long ago. This child, she must have had a hard time recently, wearing such coarse clothes. As Aurora looked at the ragged clothes on the girl, she couldn't help but feel heartache. At the same time, Aurora furrowed her brows involuntarily. Speaking of which, Zaire was almost harassed. Recalling the scene just now, Aurora's face showed anger. She then slowly opened the curtain and looked at a knight outside. Chop off the hands of that mercenary from earlier. Using a special eye signal, Aurora issued the order to the white-armored knight. After receiving the instructions from the Marchioness, several knights rode their warhorses away from the carriage procession and galloped towards the previous commercial street. Having issued the order, Aurora then retracted the murderous aura on her face. After all, she couldn't be too violent in front of her granddaughter, lest she scare her. With that in mind, Aurora once again showed a gentle smile and looked kindly at Yumo. Zaire, don't worry, we'll be home soon. As she spoke, Aurora reached out to rub Yumo's head. Hearing this and feeling the warmth of her hand, Yumo had an indescribable feeling. Ah, How did the little girl she had saved on a whim turn out to be the Marchioness's granddaughter? Moreover, what a coincidence that this girl had a twin sister as well. Was this some kind of mistake? And this lady was too domineering, just dragging her onto the carriage like that. Glancing at Aurora, who was still extremely excited, Yumo's deep blue eyes involuntarily revealed a hint of struggle. In fact, she could have sent out a blood butterfly to the Marchioness, and then left. But considering the many onlookers nearby, even if the lady fainted, she wouldn't be able to leave easily. Besides, within the City of Wind, it was hard to escape from the temple after the monk had run away. Furthermore, if the child she saved was really Yuener and truly her granddaughter, considering the subtle future relationship between herself and that child, it was better not to act against the Marchioness to avoid unnecessary complications. And so, Yumo was awkwardly dragged back to the Marquis's mansion in the city by Aurora. However, halfway through the journey, Yumo couldn't help but furrow her brows. Speaking of which, hadn't she been out for a little too long? Sister, can I go for a walk? Sure, but don't be too late, Tilda, or you'll have to accept punishment, Tilda. Punishment? Like spanking and stuff, Tilda. Hey. Recalling her last conversation with Menxi before leaving the guest house, Yumo couldn't help but feel a chill, her delicate body shivering. Oh, punishment. That tone, it must be a joke, right? For some inexplicable reason, Yumo had a bad feeling in her heart, in the Marquis's mansion at the heart of the Wind City. With the return of Marchioness Aurora and the slightly helpless Yumo, the mansion, which had been immersed in a gloomy and oppressive atmosphere, suddenly burst into life. Seeing the pink-haired girl, delicate and shyly holding the hand of the Marchioness, the servants and guards in the mansion couldn't help but reveal shocked and delighted expressions. Is that the young miss? The young miss has been found. That's great. Realizing this, old butler Audite, who had been waiting for the return of the Marchioness, was immediately moved to tears. He hurriedly rushed towards Aurora. Madam, Miss Yuan, the young miss, you found her. Huh, no, you are. However, before he could finish speaking, as Audite approached the pink-haired girl, the old butler suddenly stopped in his tracks, his eyes filled with nothing but shock. The timid demeanor, different from Miss Yuan's, instantly brought a surprising guess to the old butler's mind. Miss Zia Zaire. As soon as the words fell, the highly agitated Audite couldn't help but fall to his knees in front of Yumo, causing the latter to be taken aback. Young miss, you finally returned. Audite repeatedly wiped away his tears, his emotions indescribable. After all, it was his negligence that had led to Miss Zaire's disappearance, and she had been missing ever since. This incident had been haunting him like a nightmare. Now, seeing that Miss Zaire had returned to her family unharmed, how could he, as an old butler, not be excited? A huge mountain within his heart was suddenly shattered at this moment. In his emotional state, Audite even wanted to hug the petite girl. However, at this moment, Aurora slowly raised her hand to stop the crying old butler. Audite, you'll scare her. Hearing this, Audite also realized his mistake. After wiping away his tears with a handkerchief, Audite quickly got up and respectfully bowed to the pink-haired girl. Welcome back, Miss Zaire. Facing Audite's greeting, the pink-haired girl did not respond but silently lowered her head. Huh. This scene made Audite frown. Although Miss Zaire used to be timid, she wouldn't be so cowering when dealing with acquaintances, right? Subsequently, the old butler looked at Aurora with confusion. Madam, what is this? It's a bit complicated to explain. For now, take the child to have a bath and change into some clean clothes. All right, I understand, madam. Audite respectfully nodded in response. Well, Miss Zaire, please come with me. Audite showed Yumo a kind smile. At the same time, Aurora next to them slowly squatted down, patted Yumo's shoulder and said, "It's okay, Zaire. This old grandpa is not a bad person. He will find a maid to take you to have a bath and change into a beautiful set of clothes." Yumo, with her complicated emotions, still did not respond. However, under the extremely sorrowful persuasion of Aurora, the pink-haired girl slowly raised her hand and grasped Audite's calloused hand. Upon holding the hand of his young miss and feeling the warmth in the girl's hand, a strong sense of regained emotion suddenly emerged in Audite's heart, making him struggle to resist the urge to burst into tears. "Please follow me, miss." Saying this, Audite led Yumo by the hand and walked slowly into the Marquis mansion. Seeing that Yumo did not resist and did not develop too much resistance, Aurora couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and showed a gratified look. When Yumo and Audite had completely disappeared from her sight, the Marchioness suddenly revealed a serious mood and slowly turned around, looking at the White Knight who had just returned behind her. "How did the investigation go?" Aurora's voice was full of authority. "The investigation is done, madam," the knight behind her said somewhat awkwardly. After confirming that there was no one around, the knight walked cautiously to Aurora's side and said cautiously, "As for Miss Zaire, she was brought to the Wind City by the people of the Black Rose family along with the Chosen Maiden. It is said that she was rescued by the Chosen Maiden." Rescued. Hearing this word, Aurora's face changed abruptly, and she quickly asked anxiously, "What do you mean by rescued?" "Well, that is." "Just say it." "Yes, madam. According to the people of the Asumos Church, Miss Zaire was rescued by them from a slave trader." "What?" Upon hearing the knight's words, Aurora's face changed drastically, and she couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. "My Zaire, she became a slave." Yes. Meanwhile, in the guest house, after hearing what the priestess had said, Menxi's brow furrowed involuntarily. "You said that girl was taken away by the people of the Marquis' family." The silver-haired girl couldn't help but feel bewildered. "And it was the Marchioness, what's going on?" Hearing this, the blonde priestess also sighed helplessly. "According to the words of the Marquis servant just now, that little sister is the long-lost daughter of the Marquis family. Therefore, the Marchioness was so excited to take her straight back." "What? That lowly slave girl is actually the daughter of a Marquis? What's going on? How could the daughter of the Marquis' family become a slave?" After listening to the priestess's words, Cabin couldn't help but exclaim. However, as soon as his words left his mouth, Menxi's sharp gaze locked onto Cabin, causing him to shudder and quickly close his mouth. Then, Menxi retracted the murderous aura on her face and looked at the priestess as if seeking confirmation. "Are you sure he said that Zaya Omo is the daughter of the Marquis family?" "Yes, Miss Menxi. She is said to be the daughter of the Marquis family who disappeared 4 years ago. Additionally, they are very grateful to you for saving their young miss." "How strange." Upon hearing this, Miss Menxi couldn't help but feel puzzled as she sat back down on the sofa, rubbing her temples. Her emotions were a bit complex. On one hand, she felt relieved. At first, she thought that Yumo, or rather Zaya Omo, had decided to sneak away after confirming her own awakening. If that was truly the case, there would have been nothing she could do. Fortunately, Zaya Omo didn't really want to leave. This inevitably made Menxi feel like a weight had been lifted. Of course, apart from feeling relieved, Menxi felt mostly confused. The silver-haired girl was already immersed in her perplexed emotions. Others may not know, but how could Menxi not be aware? Her sister Yumo was a demon king. A demon king level existence. How could she have possibly become the daughter of a marquis family out of the blue? What the hell was going on? Could it be that she had some special plan and intentionally infiltrated the marquis family? However, from their previous interactions, she didn't seem to be that clever. Mengsi pouted in confusion. Wait a minute. Was Sister Yumo that knowledgeable about human nature? Perhaps she really was a demon king-level existence transformed from a human. Could it be possible that she really was the missing daughter of the Marquis family, and that the pink-haired girl was her true appearance? Speaking of which, when she had pretended to be a child and acted cute, she had asked her about related matters. However, Yumo seemed to have been hiding something about her true self. Could this be the reason? Alia, I don't understand. Mengsi couldn't help but shake her head frantically, trying to calm her wildly speculating mind. As Mengsi struggled, the priestess beside her looked at her with confusion. Miss Mengsi, are you planning to take that girl back to the Asumo's church? Hem. Hearing this question, Mengsi's light purple eyes narrowed slightly. Why ask that all of a sudden? Miss Mengsi, if the girl really is the daughter of the Marquis, taking her back to the church might be quite impossible. Ahem. Well, you know, the people of the Snow Knight Empire have always been cold towards our Asumo's church and even harbor some hostility. The Marquis is unlikely to let you take his daughter away, and besides... Besides what? Besides, I heard that the Snow Knight Empire's royal family has asked for the Marquis family's daughter to go to the imperial capital, to be some kind of crown princess candidate. If that girl really is the Marquis daughter, she will probably have to go to the imperial capital. Recalling the information she had seen before, the priestess spoke slowly. After hearing this, Mengsi's eyes narrowed abruptly, and a dangerous aura gradually emanated from her. What did you say, Crown Prince? Damn it. It was that harem guy again. Already not having a good impression of Zhu Tianao, Mengxi's dislike for him instantly escalated at this moment Marquis residence, inside the bathroom. At this moment, after a futile attempt at resistance, the disguised little girl, Yumo, was unsurprisingly stripped of her clothes by 4 maids and placed in the bathtub. Although Yumo kept insisting that she was clean and didn't need a bath, she couldn't withstand the enthusiasm of the 4 maids. Well, after all, it was the task assigned to them by the lady of the house. Considering that these maids had no ill intentions and were instead filled with goodwill, even showing unparalleled excitement in their eyes, Miss Yumo gave up her plans to resist and allowed these ladies to fuss over her. Of course, the main reason was, these ladies had excellent massage skills. Having been in this world for so long, being served like a wealthy person by several maids was a rather refreshing experience. Thus, Yumo silently closed her eyes and began to enjoy. On the other hand, while helping Yumo wash her beautiful pink hair, a little maid named Dora couldn't help but tear up. As she looked at the timid, blushing girl in the bathtub, Dora became increasingly emotional. Miss Zaire had finally returned. As Zaire's former dedicated maid, Dora had always taken care of the timid little girl like a sister. In the years since Zaire's disappearance, she had been in a state of constant despair, while also feeling extremely guilty. If only I hadn't taken leave to go home during the festival. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. But, thank heavens, the young miss has returned. However, it seemed that the young miss, after noticing the slave tattoo on the pink-haired girl's ankle, Dora's heart ached. Who knew what kind of inhuman treatment her young miss had suffered during these years? Upon seeing the bruises and frostbite marks on Yumo's delicate body as she massaged her, Dora felt her heart bleed. Don't worry, my lady. No one will dare to hurt you in the future. They, hearing the words of the maid and feeling the sympathetic gazes from the surrounding maids, Yumo felt a bit conflicted. After all, these bruises and whip marks on her body were simulated using the power of shadow illusion, only meant to deceive people. But seeing these servants so heartbroken, Yumo couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Furthermore, they must really like that girl named Zaire. Also, the love in the eyes of the lady, and the butler was undoubtedly genuine. Receiving this inexplicable love from others, albeit mistaken love, made Yumo feel a slight guilt. At this moment, the bathroom door slowly opened. Under the respectful gazes of the maids, Aurora, who had changed her clothes, slowly entered the bathroom and came to the edge of the bathtub. "Let me take over." "Yes, madam." Hearing Aurora's words, the maids, including Dora, silently stood aside and handed the cleaning tools to Aurora. Then, Aurora slowly raised her hand and personally helped Yumo wash her beautiful hair, her hands filled with warmth. "Is it comfortable, Zaire?" However, Yumo didn't answer Aurora's question, but instead emphasized her identity once more. I really am not your granddaughter. Unfortunately, having learned from a sumo's church that the pink-haired girl had lost her memory, Aurora was even more convinced that Yumo was her granddaughter. The little girl's resistance was just due to fear of strangers. Actually, it didn't matter whether Zaire could regain her memory or not. In Aurora's view, Zaire's past as a slave was a terrifying shadow, which was precisely why she lost her memory. It might be better not to regain her memory, so Zaire wouldn't be troubled by those horrible memories. With her love, gentleness, and patience, Aurora was confident that she could gradually open Zaire's heart and bring her back to this family. "Zaire, you don't need to be afraid. You are my granddaughter and the daughter of the Marquis family. From now on, no one will dare to hurt you. You can live here with peace of mind. You don't have to worry about being beaten or scolded, nor about suffering from cold or hunger. Here, everyone will take good care of you." Yes. While stroking Yumo's head, Aurora gently spoke in a comforting tone. Looking at the other party's serious expression, Yumo fell silent again. She knew that no matter how much she tried to explain, it would be futile. The woman in front of her had already deep down recognized her as her granddaughter. The only way to make her realize the truth was to reveal a bit of her own power. "Should I do it?" Thinking of this, a barely perceptible red light seeped through the azure-blue eyes of Yumo. However, at this moment, the bathroom door opened again, and a kindly old maid slowly walked in. The other maids immediately bowed their heads and greeted her upon seeing the elder maid. "Head maid." Feeling the movement behind her, Aurora slowly turned to look at the old maid. "What's the matter, Jera?" "Madam, The head maid called Jera seemed somewhat conflicted. Seeing this, Aurora immediately sensed something was wrong, and her violet eyes slightly narrowed. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Madam, the emissary of the Crown Prince, who had been staying in the residence, would like to have a conversation with you." Why so suddenly?" "Well," hearing this, Jera looked somewhat embarrassedly towards the pink-haired girl soaking in the pedal pool. "It might be about the Crown Princess matter. Since Miss Zaire has returned, I'm afraid he wants to." "You mean that scoundrel wants Zaire to be the Crown Princess?" A thick color of anger emerged in Aurora's eyes. For a moment, the entire bathroom fell into a strange silence, and a suffocating atmosphere slowly spread. Aurora's formidable seventh-tier aura was faintly released, causing the maids to tremble involuntarily. Of course, this pressure from the aura had no effect on Miss Yumo. However, after hearing the conversation between the two, Miss Yumo suddenly became interested. "The Crown Prince. So this girl named Zaire, she have a marriage agreement with the Crown Prince? If so, could I use this identity to meet the Crown Prince? I'm quite curious about the situation with the Son of Destiny, the hero. With this thought, Yumo asked innocently, "The Crown Prince?" Huh. Hearing the pink-haired girl's words, Aurora suddenly realized her lapse and hurriedly retracted her unconsciously released her aura. She solemnly placed her hands on Yumo's shoulders. Considering that young girls are usually very interested in princes and crown princesses, Aurora felt it necessary to emphasize to Zaire, that crown prince is not a good person. Really? That lecherous guy is said to have affairs with 5 girls already, and his intention to make you the crown princess is not because he loves you. He wants to deceive you into going to the imperial city and use you to restrain our family. Zaire, you need to be clever. That guy is not a good person. As Aurora mentioned the crown prince, her tone was filled with disgust and hostility, which made Yumo feel a bit confused. She blinked her deep blue eyes. Not a good person. It seemed that the reputation of this Son of Destiny wasn't very good. Moreover, a lecher involved with 5 women. Is true or false? If it's true, he already has 5 close female friends, and he still wants to marry Minxie. Could it be that this Son of Destiny is a harem protagonist? Would my Minxie become one of high harem in the future? Thinking of this, Yumo narrowed her eyes slightly, and a hint of annoyance appeared on her forehead. Feeling quite displeased. However, just as Aurora continued to persuade Yumo with heartfelt words about the Crown Prince's misdeeds, the recently closed bathroom door was suddenly slammed open. Zaire found her. As the door opened, a rough and extremely excited man's voice resounded into the bathroom. The next moment, a white-haired old man in a blue and white military coat rushed impatiently into the bathroom. Without a doubt, this old man was the Marquis family's head, Xiumu, who had hurried back in a rush. However, at the moment when she heard these words, Aurora's eyebrows twitched wildly and her words stopped abruptly. The next instant, Aurora bit her lip and a burst of anger erupted in her violet eyes. Before Xiumu could figure out the situation, under the astonished gaze of the maids, Aurora suddenly flashed in front of the old man with the protection of her purple energy. "You old man, who agreed to let you barge into a lady's boudoir?" With Aurora's angry shout, her iron fist slammed into Xiumu's face, embedding itself right in it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.